Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're stepping right into the dark, chaotic, and incredibly atmospheric mystery of the Garnett House. Now, this isn't just your run-of-the-mill, run-down old building. We're talking about a property that seasoned researchers have labeled as one of the absolute most terrifying, energetically heavy locations they have ever investigated. We're going to look closely at the claims, the deeply unsettling history, and the highly unusual physical evidence captured within its slanted walls.
Okay, let's dive into this. Consider this incredible quote for a second. The paranormal activity in this house was so violent, they called the police. I mean, think about how incredibly rare that is. These are investigators who actively seek out the strange and the scary for a living, right? And yet the sheer panic induced by whatever is happening inside the Garnett House caused them to literally dial 911 in terror. It really begs the question, what exactly is going on inside this place?
Section 1. The scariest place investigated. To understand why this location commands so much fear, we really have to look at the immediate, modern-day context. Researchers claim that this intense dread doesn't take hours to set in. It hits you the absolute second you cross the threshold. The sensory overload is immediate. Investigators report extreme dizziness, disorientation, this heavy, suffocating energy, and the distinct feeling of being constantly watched. But what makes this place truly terrifying on a physical level is the architecture itself. The floors are incredibly unlevel and the walls are visibly slanted. It creates a deeply disorienting, real-life funhouse effect. Your brain is already struggling to process the environment before the lights even go out. And you know, that disorientation? It quickly turns to panic. During one past visit, the activity escalated so rapidly that investigators actually barricaded themselves inside a room to hide from an unseen force. This perfectly grounds the paranormal claims in highly physical, undeniable human panic. It's a complete psychological breakdown.
Section 2. A dark and bloody history. But why is the energy so heavy to begin with? Well, to truly understand the modern claims, we must pull back and neutrally examine the dark, verifiable history that supposedly charged this location in the first place. Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds. It's a multi-era story of chaos. It was originally built in 1858 as a hotel by a town prosecutor named David Halston. In 1864, things took a really grim turn when a vigilante mob dragged a man named John Warren from the attic and lynched him. Fast forward to the 1900s, and the house was repurposed into a rather unorthodox doctor's clinic and even served as a makeshift jail. Every single era left a distinct heavy mark. And the artifacts left behind read exactly like an inventory for a horror movie. Inside, you'll still find a vintage medical x-ray table and old holistic doctor's laboratory coats. But most alarmingly, there is verified human blood splatter on the ceiling of one of the clinic rooms. Whether it's from rogue medical centrifuges or the homemade bondage and restraints found discarded nearby, the dark reality is permanently stained right into the plaster.
Since it was built by a prosecutor, the house briefly operated as an overflow town jail, too. It notably held Sarah Potter, who was accused of poisoning her husband with arsenic before she actually managed to escape trial. And in a fascinating twist of fate, the famed illusionist Harry Houdini stayed here as well. It beautifully contrasts his theatrical magic with the grim reality of accused murderers escaping into the night from the exact same halls.
Section 3. Meet the entities. With a history that's saturated in chaos, it's no wonder the house has developed its own specific lore. Let's introduce the entities that are said to wander these heavy, slanted halls today.
So, the crucial point is, the most infamous of these is known simply as the Griner. This is a malevolent entity primarily said to haunt the library room, recognized by an unnatural, terrifying, ear-to-ear grin. It's a leering, deeply unfriendly manifestation that researchers specifically seek out, but also actively fear.
The psychological grip of this specific legend is absolutely staggering. According to local claims, one woman reported waking up in her own bed to find this exact grinning figure hovering over her. Here's the catch, though. Her home was almost 2 hours away from the Garnett House, and this happened months before she had ever visited or even heard of the property. That anecdote perfectly illustrates how deeply the lore of this house permeates the minds of those who engage with it. Then there's the attic, the site of the 1864 lynching. The lore here states that innocuous objects like raggedy dolls and kickballs are violently hurled down at visitors. One investigator noted that a kickball placed in the attic space didn't simply roll out. As the quote highlights, it didn't roll out. It came flying out of there with a lot of force.
Section 4. The Return Investigation. Which brings us right up to the present day. The original investigators, who were previously terrified right out of the building, decided to return. But this time they brought a masked skeptic, a debunker nicknamed Side-Eye Guy, to scientifically test the madness.
And this brilliantly illustrates the divide between how the two opposing camps interpret phenomena. Take the beach ball incident. A beach ball suddenly falls out of a closet. For side A, the believers, it was thrown with demonic force, expertly navigating around metal obstacles. For side B, the skeptics, it's just the slanted floors, heavy footsteps, and a simple gravity coincidence. Frustrated by what he sees as just simple architectural quirks, the masked skeptic actually decides to directly challenge the house. He begins to verbally taunt the empty rooms, demanding an undeniable display of power instead of just subtle creaks and rolling balls. He tells whatever might be listening to step up and prove him wrong. His taunt culminates in this very specific challenge. Are you going to try to scare us out like you did last time?
Well, immediately following that taunt, a massive, unexplainable thud echoes through the room. It was perfectly timed, incredibly loud, and it absolutely startled the skeptic right into silence. It instantly challenged his whole bravado.
That loud thud seemingly opened the floodgates for the rest of the stakeout. The team documented a barrage of bizarre sensory details, disembodied screams for help, low demonic growls and unnatural buzzing, rapidly moving shadows darting in the corners, and even a psychic vision of a puppeteer manipulating a doll through black sludge.
Section 5. The Skeptic's Verdict. So, after a night of such intense phenomena, where does that leave our staunch non-believer? Let's conclude this by looking strictly through the eyes of the debunker.
Now, what's really interesting here is that the staunch skeptic was left totally speechless. He conceded that he was completely unable to rationally explain away that violently loud thud, nor could he fully justify the bizarre physics of those moving objects. Even a dedicated non-believer had to admit that his gravity theories just couldn't cover everything.
His final takeaway perfectly sums it up. He stated, "I don't even know what I believe in at the end of the day, but what I know is that something's happening." The experiences inside these walls are so intense that they completely blur the line between architectural quirks and legitimate terror.
Which leaves us with the ultimate puzzle. Are these simply the natural vibrations of a deeply slanted 1858 funhouse, or is the dark history of the Garnett House truly reaching out from the shadows? Examine the evidence, look closely at the history, and decide for yourself. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you next time.